Hello, everyone. I am Northern Westman, and you are watching the Disciple Hour, episode 23. Today, we will be discussing the case of Hannah Payne, who tried to perform a citizen's arrest in Georgia, but accidentally ended up killing the man, Herring, a black man who was drunk driving and drove away from a car crash scene which he was involved in. And she was found guilty of all 8 counts. And this really does reek of an anti-white tribunal and a social lynching. And before I get into the details, I want my 2 friends here, Ian and Gentile Gentleman, to say hello. Fellas.
Hello, this is Ian.
Hello, everybody. This is Gentile.
So, this is from Fox 5 Atlanta. Prosecutors accused Payne of playing cop in 2019 when she followed Herring after he left the scene of a car crash that she was not directly involved in. Payne cut him off and eventually shot him. The defense claimed Payne acted in self-defense because after confronting Herring, she claimed he started attacking her. Payne took the stand in her own defense during the murder trial. She said there was a state officer present at the initial crash of which she was a witness. She claimed that the officer told her and another witness at the scene outright that Herring was inebriated or intoxicated, drunk. At some point, Payne said Herring started revving his engine and pulled away from the scene of the initial crash. She testified that at the time, she was on the phone with a 911 dispatcher who asked if she had been able to grab his tag number. She said when she realized she hadn't and thought no one else did either, she got in her car. She told the court that Terry Robinson, the man she believed to be the state officer, told her to quote-unquote go, insinuating he wanted her to follow Herring. At one point, Payne testified that Herring's car stopped in a turning lane. She said she exited her vehicle and approached Herring with her phone on speaker to show that she was in contact with 911. She said she told him that the dispatcher asked both of them to return to the original accident site. She then told the court that Herring grabbed her shirt and her wrist and pulled her into the vehicle, and she saw her life flash before her eyes. Additionally, she claimed Herring appeared to be reaching behind his front seats before, quote, mashing the gas, end quote, and crashing into her car. It was at that time that she drew out her gun. Payne claimed Herring tried to take the gun from her and it went off. She also claimed that her finger was never on the trigger. Despite her testimony, it only took the jury 2 hours to reach a verdict, finding her guilty on all counts. And then I have the 8 counts here, and this is from Atlanta First News. So the counts are 1, malice murder, 2, felony murder, 3, aggravated assault, 4, felony murder, again, 5, false imprisonment, 6, 7, and 8 are all 3 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. And just to define what a malice murder is in the state of Georgia, it is 1, the accused caused the death of another person, and 2, the act was committed with malice aforethought. So there you have it, fellas, and everyone listening. This is obviously a kangaroo court. There is no way that this was a malice murder. And the account of a false imprisonment is completely ridiculous.
Yeah, and to really elaborate, for people listening and people who may not have looked into the case and why this is so important, is a lot of details are even left and evidence are left out of the articles. There's certain things they don't want to talk about. And one of those things that they don't want to talk about is that she was on her cell phone with 911 dispatchers throughout the entire event. So they quite literally have recordings of her on her phone following him, parking her car, and walking up to his car. And those things surely would have been played in court, showing that she didn't just chase this guy down with the intent to just go shoot him and ha ha ha, you know, uh, do something illegal. She was literally on the phone with 911. And the other thing that they don't really want to talk about or list in there is the injuries that she sustained. She does claim that they struggled for the gun because Herring attacked her, but they don't say all the injuries she had. And in some of the articles and the video that you showed us, Westman, before we started here, there's clearly red marks all over her face and her neck and her shoulders because she was standing outside of his car window with the window down. So he reached out of his car, grabbed her around the neck or by the shoulders, and pulled her into the car. Um, and they started to struggle, and that's when the gun goes off. They try to make it sound like she chased him down and just fired at him, which leaves out so many details. She parked her car in such a way that he couldn't flee. She approached the window and they had a verbal altercation where she tried to get him to go back. And when he grabs her and pulls her through the window of his car and starts fighting with her is when the gunfire goes off. So whether she pulled the trigger or not, whether he pulled the trigger or not, it doesn't matter. He initiated an assault on her, and she has the right to defend herself at that point. And anyone who argues otherwise is being dishonest here, because anyone else in the world, if you were having some kind of a verbal altercation with someone and they grabbed you by the neck and tried to pull you into their car and then slammed on the gas while you were hanging out their car window, and the other kind of reckless behavior that was going on here by this person, you absolutely, have the right to do something to stop this from happening, and that's being forgotten here. And there are people that might say that she was overstepping her bounds. She's not a police officer, so why is she involved? And sure, she could have just not cared. She could have let this guy drive away and not done anything about it. But what you're basically saying there is that anyone who isn't a police officer is not allowed to help someone out or to stop the commission of a crime. So if you see someone stealing an old lady's purse, you can't go over there and grab them and force them to let go of her purse because you're not a cop. If you see someone walk up to an old man and shove him down on the ground, you can't go grab him and hold on to him until the police come because you're not a cop. Like that's what you're basically saying, is you're not allowed to stop or interfere in the commission of a crime because you're not a police officer. And anyone reasonable understands that that's not a good argument. It's not a good argument that any moral person would accept.
Exactly. And we can learn from this. There are some lessons learned here. Number one, your right to self-defense is non-existent in an anti-white world. Number two, citizens' arrest does not apply in an anti-white world. Three, you can't protect your community in an anti-white world. And 4, you don't get to save anyone in an anti-white world, like you were saying.
Yeah,
I mean, these
I
are
think,
at least 4 points.
sorry. I just wanted to add on to what we're talking about here. I mean, I think this really shows how, quote unquote diversity or multiracialism, it really increases the power of the state because it it dissolves social trusts and makes it so that everybody's on edge. So that leaves you no choice except to depend on agents of the state, such as police officers, to keep the peace. And I mean, sadly, this is nothing new. I mean, we saw back in 2020 with the lynching of the McMichaels, which was also in the state of Georgia, and it was a similar situation where there was a criminal in their neighborhood, the guy Ahmaud Arbery, and they decided to actually confront him and actually try to protect their community. And they were on 911 at the time the incident happened, and they went to jail for life for allegedly murdering this guy. And you know, another thing, we remember the attempted lynching of George Zimmerman back in 2012 with Trayvon Martin. I mean, he's another guy. He called 911. He was trying to protect his community, and when he got attacked by the person he was trying to stop, then he acted in self-defense, and they made it out to be he was the bad guy. So, you know, as was pointed out, if you're planning to murder somebody, you don't call 911 and tell them where you are and what your name is and what you're doing, because that makes literally no sense whatsoever. And I know anti-whites will say that we live in a system that encourages that, but that's really nothing could be farther from the truth. So it just shows how there's no real sense of justice in a multiracial society. It's just it's just all tribal warfare. And, a society that's homogeneous, that's united in terms of values, culture, biospirit, etc., they can be self-policing to a large degree because, they think alike, they think similarly, and people can generally agree on what the goals of their society are. But you can't have that with multiracialism because it just creates competing visions and a cultural arms race.
Perfectly stated. Yeah, I forgot to mention that Hannah Payne is white, but this Herring was black. And I'm not sure about the race of the police officer at the initial crash site, or the 9/11 dispatcher. And then we don't know anything about the jury. Since Georgia is pretty whitely raised, you can assume that they were probably majority non-white, but we don't know that. But it does reek of jealousy and just anti-whiteism, really. I just don't see white people finding her guilty on all of those counts. Like you said, Gentel, you had a perfect summary. This is simply too ridiculous. I mean, it's clear that she had 9/11 on. I mean, she was not just hunting him down and killing him in cold blood. That's obviously not what happened. And the evidence was clearly laid out. And so you can see that this is not our people's biospiritual sense of justice. And yes, justice is differently portrayed, sensed between the races. This is just, it really does reek of a non-white, anti-white world, anti-white, non-white world.
Well, and we really have to remember that this has been demonstrated for decades in the justice system. So you're right, we don't know the identity of every single juror because that's kept mostly private. But the 4 or 5 jurors that have been photographed or interviewed have been black. Now there's There's probably more jurors, so we can't say for sure it was an all-black jury, but there was at least a majority, if not a large amount of the jury as black folks. And the judge was black. We know that for sure as well. So there is a racial component to how the crime was viewed. And we saw this um, with many cases in the past, even, oh goodness, what was that football player who killed his wife? O.J. Simpson, there you go. I have no idea why that left my brain, but in the O.J. Simpson case, this phenomenon was on perfect display. Not only was the evidence overwhelming that he murdered his wife, um, and the person that she was with, but even during the, before the trial and the aftermath, you know, black folks all across the country, whenever white people commented on it, they wanted to wait for the evidence. But black folks all across the country, even before the trial had started, had predetermined that, they were just trying to hamstring him, that nobody, people only care because it was a white woman who died and they're trying to blame a black person for it. They had predetermined, that he was innocent. And even black women who were interviewed identified more with O.J. Simpson because he was a black person than they did with the woman who was murdered because she was white. So when we're talking about how people view situations, especially the black community, they always, at least I guess I can't say always, but the majority of them will see race as the most important factor in any situation, even beyond gender and other things that you might think play a role. So, what this jury and what this judge were looking at when this trial started was, this is a white person who killed a black person. And that was all they needed to know to really make up their mind. They don't care that she was on the phone with 911. They don't care that Herring was drunk driving and crashed into a car and tried to flee a scene. They don't care about any of those details. They care that a white person killed a black person, and regardless of the situation, the white person had to be punished. And that's as far as their thought process probably went. And we see that in many cases where the attorneys have admitted that they will intentionally try to pick a black jury when a black victim or a black perpetrator is involved to try to get sympathy, whichever side they're trying to get it from the black jurors, because they know that they will identify with the black person more simply based on race than the evidence. And they use this in court as a way to manipulate the jury. And the other thing to remember as well is that if Payne was black, let's say she was a black woman who did the exact same thing that she did, and it was still a black man who ended up being shot in a struggle, it wouldn't have even made the news. And she probably wouldn't have been charged. I'm almost definitely confident that if the exact same thing had happened and there was not a racial component to the situation, or if Herring had been a white man and a white woman had accidentally shot him under the exact same circumstances, if charges were filed, they probably would have been dropped and it wouldn't have even made the news. This is making the news because of the races of the people involved, and that's intentional. There are people, who get shot during the struggle for a firearm in this country all the time, and only certain ones make the news. And it's making the news so that they can direct you to think and see things a certain way. They want to be able to say, here's another white person convicted for shooting a black person, and that's all they want you to take from it. And they want to say it over and over and over again. So that's definitely. I'm sorry, Ian, go ahead.
Huh? Oh, no, you were cutting out there for a second. I didn't catch the last part of what you said. But
Oh yeah, I was just finishing up saying that is definitely the narrative that they're pushing. It's justice isn't blind, it's anti-white. And the reason why these cases make the news is because they can be used to be anti-white. And the reason why these crimes are even charged and brought to court is so they can try to achieve anti-white ends and punish and set examples for white people to be too afraid to stand up or to act in situations.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to mention something else about the O.J. Simpson trial that you brought up. I mean, I know that I've read several things talking about how, from the perspective of a lot of black people, it was sort of like getting even because, a few years earlier with the LA riots over the whole Rodney King thing, like they thought that, OJ getting found not guilty was like payback for that. Like it's not about the facts of the case or who was right and wrong. It's about, you know, one of yours got off, now one of ours gets off. It's like they think it's just like this tit for tat thing. And, obviously that's not a standard of justice. It has to be unbiased. And that's how we as Western kind see it. But, other biospiritual projections don't have that understanding of justice, which and whatever comes of that, that's on them, not us. But and also I remember reading about the OJ case, how in the prosecution team that was accusing OJ, there was actually one member of that lawyer team that was black himself, and I think I remember reading that one of the things they tried to argue to the jury, which was, I don't know if it was all black or mostly black, but they're trying to talk about OJ, saying like, yeah, OJ's black, but was he ever done for the black community? He's rich, he lives in these nice, neighborhoods, and he's always just kind of done his own thing. I mean, in fact, I've even heard somewhere that OJ once said something like, I'm not black, I'm OJ. Like he didn't really identify with the black community very much. He just kind of wanted to do his own thing. And so they actually had to make a racial appeal to the jury to say that, just because he's black doesn't mean he cares anything about you guys, or he's not really one of you. So they actually, even back then, the attorneys recognized that that was a thing, that the makeup of the jury could affect the verdict, and they actually had to try to argue along those lines. So I mean, and that was back in 1995. So it's not like this is anything new, and we're just seeing how it's gotten worse and worse over the years. And it's just sad that it has to get to this point where white people are just straight up being lynched for any of this to really for us to start talking about it.
Well, yeah, and then and that's a very interesting point too, and especially us as Americans, for anyone who maybe not might not be from the United States listening to this, us as Americans, we've been dealing with these kinds of situations much longer than other Western countries who have only kind of in the recent history really gotten these large groups of people, and they're experiencing things that we've been experiencing things for a long time. And you guys can look, at things that have happened in the United States as a good blueprint for what will happen in the future. And even if it hadn't been for Rodney King, there would have been something else. See, that's another great point, is that everything, is always this retaliation for a past wrong. Like you said, it's not about justice in this particular situation. It's a white person involved, and there we have a grievance against them. So regardless of the facts, this is an opportunity to punish a white person, and they take advantage of that. If it wasn't Rodney King, it would be Martin Luther King. If it wasn't Martin Luther King, it'd be Malcolm X. And if it wasn't Malcolm X, it would be slavery, and it would be X, and it would be Y, and it would be Z, and it would be every other anti-white grievance that they could pull up to justify why they don't care if an innocent white person is punished, because they have been brainwashed and taught and had it crammed into their head that black people all across this country every day are just walking around minding their own business, jogging, not bothering anyone, and white people just show up and put them in prison for no reason at all and attack them and murder them and all this stuff. And so when they have an opportunity to hurt even an innocent white person, they feel it's justified because of that, and that's intentional. I mean, that is the anti-white narrative in a nutshell, is it doesn't matter if white people are innocent. you still have a grievance that allows you to harm them anyway. It's the complete justification of harm.
Brilliantly said. I was searching for an image that I found of this incident. There is someone takes a photo out of a car, and it shows the incident where Hannah Payne is holding her gun in her right hand, and they are struggling. She's struggling with herring. And I don't know if this is a video. It must be a video, but this image shows Hannah in kind of it. When you just see it out of context, it seems as if she's like dominating him, being intimidating. She, I think she's wearing high heels. I can't really tell from this angle. I'll display it on the screen, but this case, this narrative is being presented as, that this anti-white slur, Karen, is just going up, pulling him off, and going up to him with her gun in her hand and just being the mean white bitch and murdering him with in cold blood. And I mean, this is just not what happened, as we know. He pulled her inside the car, and that's when she grabbed her gun. But just from this image alone, it looks as if she's just like being this bitchy Karen and just pulling up her gun, and a few moments later, bang, murders him.
Well, and I'm really glad that you said that, because, here in the United States, we have a very big gun culture. And you're right, from your perspective, if you don't know what to look for, this picture might look bad, but let me break this picture down, because I'm zooming in on it here and I'm looking at it. So you're absolutely right. She is wearing heels. Those are black leather heels. I know, because I have 4 sisters and a mother, and I've been around heels quite a lot in my life. She has a holster on her right hip. You can see her shirt is hinging on it. There's a gap above her belt line where the shirt is hinged on it when you zoom in. So she has a holster, and her right hand and the firearm are right above the holster. So this picture was taken probably right after the gun was drawn. And now, for all of our firearms people out there who are waiting to hear the safety details, let's talk about how she's holding it. So she's holding it with her finger over the trigger guard. So she was being honest. She didn't draw it with her finger on the trigger. Her finger is exactly where it's supposed to be. She has her thumb and her 3 lower fingers on the grip in proper position, and she has her finger on top of the trigger guard, not resting on the trigger itself. And she's pointing it down towards the ground next to her right hip. So even here, and you can see her hair is waving in the air. So she's jerking. She's making a jerking motion, and her left arm is reaching forward into the window. I can't see if Herring is pulling her arm or if she's holding the window or what the case may be, but she is jerking back and drawing this pistol, still pointing it at the ground, not at a person, with her finger in the safe position, and she's reacting to something that's happening in front of her. And any firearms trained person will tell you this is exactly the way any person is trained to react in a self-defense situation. Your first move is to attempt to create space by stepping back, which is why her hair is flying in the wind there. You draw your firearm with your finger off the trigger so you don't accidentally shoot yourself or fire your gun in a direction you don't want to fire it. And as you pull it up, you keep it pointed at the ground until you are safely able to point it at what you're trying to shoot at. And this picture perfectly encapsulates her using her firearm in a safe manner. So she's obviously been trained. And her testimony about saying she didn't put her finger on the trigger now actually looks like it's even more sustainable. It's much more valid evidence because she's demonstrated in this picture that she's been trained to use that firearm and she's using it safely, given the situation. So, to someone like me who knows what to look for, this picture actually makes her look good and makes the other person look bad. But you're right, to someone who doesn't know very much about firearms or self defense training, this might look bad, like she's just walking around with a pistol, but it's the little details that will let you know that she's actually using that firearm safely.
Exactly.
Wow, that's great.
And yeah, when I've been analyzing it as you've been talking, you know, like you said, this is the moment that she drew her gun, right? And this has to be a frame in a video. So someone pulled over, right, and rolled down the window and started filming on her phone, right? This cannot have been a picture. I mean, the probability of him snatching one picture exactly as she draws the gun, very unlikely. And just, the quality isn't that good. That's why, the car has clearly pulled over and rolled down the window and started filming on the phone. The quality, this is not a photograph. It's bright outside, it's the middle of the day. So this was definitely a video footage, and they have selectively chosen this frame because it displays her in a negative light, right? And it plays into the anti-white narrative, this Karen bitch, right? And because she's wearing those heels, her ass looks bigger, like a fat ass, the Karen bitch just pulling up her gun and just shooting the black man, right? It plays perfectly into the anti-white narrative.
Well, and you can also tell it's a video because the pixelation where the camera's trying to adjust to the movement is all moving in one direction. It's all moving towards the right. So the car is moving forward at a slow rate of speed here, and you can see the camera's trying to keep up with the pixelation as they pass by. So you're right. It's most definitely a frame from a video.
Good eye. Right. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the full video anywhere. Why is it not in the media? Like, this is very important evidence. Like you were saying, Gentle, like we want to hear the phone call with the 9/11 dispatcher. We want to see this video. We want to judge it for ourselves, for Christ's sake.
Well, I think a lot like the anti-white manifesto. I don't think they want the public to see that. And like you said, usually we don't see this evidence until after the trial because they don't want to bias the jury, but the trial's over. So this evidence should be being released. Just like the body cam footage of George Floyd was released right after the trial ended. They have no problem showing body cam footage or any other evidence when it supports their theory. But yeah, this video probably to someone like me who understands, firearm safety and stuff, a lot of people would see this video and easily be able to show that she was behaving responsibly. And so they're just releasing a still frame and they're just releasing what they want to release. And, unfortunately, that's their prerogative. Sadly, that is the law. The evidence belongs to the state. At this point, it belongs to the department that handled the case, and if they decide not to show it, they can decide not to show it, and literally you have to go to court to force them to do it otherwise. And sadly, in the anti-white narrative, that's very unlikely to happen. So we'll see if more evidence comes out, but sadly it really just belongs to them at this point.
Right. Yeah. It makes me so angry, like makes me sick to my stomach. I mean, she's innocent, being, sentenced to life imprisonment. Anyone, white people who, if white people had been in the jury, all white jury, then they would have seen this video, they would have seen all the evidence and just concluded, yeah, it was perhaps, she may have made a few mistakes, just get the number plate right, but this is still, according to Georgian law, it's a citizen's arrest. But since we live in an anti-white world, you can forget all about that. A citizen's arrest is a Western standard. She is policing her community.
Well, and the other thing to remember there too is that, yeah, we could argue maybe it was a mistake, but at the same time, criminals would not so brazenly commit crime if they actually thought the community was going to stand up against them. Like if I go into a crowd and try to steal an old woman's purse, the 5 or 6 men in close proximity to me are going to chase me down and kick my butt and take that purse back. If criminals actually thought that the public was going to behave that way, they would not commit crimes so brazenly. It is the fact that the general population in our society now has basically been browbeaten into minding their own business to the point where they watch people being beaten in the street and their first reaction is just to film it, not even to help. Or they see a store being ransacked and they just walk by, just moseying on. It's not even exciting to them anymore. And the reason these things happen is because criminals know, like, well, if we all just run in and grab stuff and leave, nobody's going to interfere. And this is why nobody interferes, because the anti-white narrative is forcing you to believe that as a white person, as any kind of a person who appreciates rule of law, you can't stand up and you can't do anything about it. So in the anti-white narrative, what she did, it's a mistake. But if she had done this in 1960, the whole community would be giving her a medal. The mayor would probably call her at home, be like, wow, great job. Thank you so much for stopping that drunk guy from driving off and hurting someone else. She would have been lauded as a hero. But in the anti-white narrative, she's a villain. And that's the whole point of the anti-white narrative, is to invert everything that we know biospiritually as good and heroic and turning it into a villainous action. How dare you stop a criminal? How dare you, take extreme ownership of your own community and take the violation of law in that community personally? How dare you? And it's so deep-seated, and it is a meme pathogen, that you're just supposed to mind your own business as crime goes on around you, especially as a man. But I mean, even she's a woman and she's doing what I would have expected a man to do. So, in a non-anti-white world, she'd be a hero. And there'd be articles saying what a great job she did.
Amen. However, I have to warn people. We can say, this is how it should be. And yes, I agree. This is indeed how it should be. But we live in an anti-white world and we have to adapt. If you do encounter something like this, if you encounter anti-whites or non-whites committing a crime, just film it. Maximum, just at the, do not try to take him down, perform a citizen's arrest, forget it. We have to learn from the Ahmaud Arbery case and this case here. And if a non-white, an anti-white non-white, or just an anti-white in general breaks into your home and then flees, and you think you have a chance to chase him down, forget it. Don't do it. Because then it will be framed as a white man just chased down an innocent non-white who just was jogging, like you said, just jogging, innocently jogging in the neighborhood. accidentally stepped on your porch, right? They will frame it like that, right? You just stepped on your porch, even though he's burglarizing your home. The media will lie. And and the sick white man just follows him, chases him down, and murders him in cold blood because he stepped on his lawn. Like, and they will spin it into some anti-white bullshit like that. Just we have to adapt to an anti-white world. It's very sickening. It lowers trust. I mean, we are already a low trust society. The United States has been brought to a low trust society decades ago. My country is becoming low trust society. All Western countries are becoming low trust societies. And we just have to adapt to this. That's a black pill, but sorry, folks, you just have to hear it.
Yeah, we just have to play it smart for the time being, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
and I forgot to say, you can't trust the court system, period. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, yeah, sadly, it is true. You will do the right thing and they will punish you for it. And that's just such a sticky situation. No one knows how they'll react till they get into it. But yeah, unfortunately, it is something we have to think about and have to examine. But yeah. One other thing I was going to bring up, because they called it malice murder, and you read the definition, approaching someone with malice, in order to harm them. And I wanted to point out, what the Bible says about this. And when the Bible describes murder, it either it's talking about the punishment or giving examples of people who have murdered, like Cain or Satan and things like that, when they're referred to as murderers. But anytime when they're talking about, especially in the book of Numbers and other areas about murder and what to do about it and the proper punishments for it, it uses a specific word called enmity. Enmity, Enmity. And enmity is when you have a feeling of being actively opposed or hostile to someone else. More simply, it's a deep-rooted hatred. When you kill someone because you have a deep-rooted hatred for them, that's what the Bible defines as murder. And this is what gives so much room for self-defense and for other types of situations. Is in this country, back when our laws were first written, this country was formed by rugged men who went into the wilderness with a rifle and a Bible. And murder, you had to have enmity. And what they're basically trying to say when they convict her of malice murder is that this woman had such a deep-rooted hatred for this man that she wanted to kill him, that the killing of him was intentional and that it was done in malice. And as we've, kind of beaten the dead horse here, the jurors saw it as just a white person killing a black person, and that's all they care about. And so they'll convict them of just about anything. But when you really look at it, it's something that she shouldn't have even been charged with. Because the situation is that this person commits a crime, attempts to flee, she attempts to get him to go back, and confronts him, and then during a struggle, he dies. That has nothing to do with enmity or malice. There is no deep-seated hatred there. This situation was brought about by this person. They did this to themselves by driving drunk, hitting someone, fleeing the scene, and then choosing to attack someone when they stopped them from fleeing the scene. Those are four bad choices in a row that person chose and dealt with the consequences of. So when we really do truly understand this in the biblical sense, using the word malice or trying to say that it's murder, which means that enmity must have taken place, is completely absurd.
It is absurd. And I mean, if we were to see this video footage of her confronting him, I mean, it's pretty clear that this is not a work of malice. It's just she got an anti-white tribunal and her life is ruined because of anti-whiteism. It's a black pill, but justice for Hannah Payne, and we'll be praying for her and her family. I pray that this case will spread like a wildfire throughout the internet. I want all white people to wake up to the injustice that we live under, the anti-white narrative, the anti-white regime. We have to put an end to this. And those will be my final words. Thank you all for listening. And God bless you all.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much, and God bless.
God bless.